This conference will now be recorded.
So in the previous session, we have discussed about CAPEX programming execution life cycle, and we have discussed about the various types of data types has been given by CAPEX programming language. And from the data types, we have discussed about the string data type, ID data type, Boolean data type. Next one. Let's see few more data types. The next one is integer data type. So what is this integer data type and what is the use? Integer data type is used to store the integer values, nothing but only the numerical values which doesn't have any decimal types. Which doesn't have any decimal values. Okay, we can store only the numerical values without any decimal points. Only the integer part. For example, I want to store like some 25,000 or 5 lakhs. Like that, we can able to store some numerical values which doesn't have any integer part. Sorry, any decimal part. So for that reason, we are using this integer data type. Now, so now let's see in this case here. Let me use the notepad. This data type allows store the numerical values inside the variable without any decimal points. Without any decimal points. Without any decimal points, only that integer values we can able to store inside this. Like for example, some 100, 25,000, 5 lakhs, like that we can able to store only that integer part values. Now, so whenever I'm storing these integer values inside the data type, there is a limitation. Okay, there is a limitation which has been given by Salesforce. So what is that limitation here? Each integer data type variable can store the value, can store the integer value between the range -2 to the power of 31 to plus 2 to the power of plus 2 to the power of 31 minus 1. Okay, so because each and every integer value will be having some specific range. Like for example, if anybody is aware of that C programming language, in C programming, each and every integer data type will allows us to store the value between the range -32,767 to or 768 to plus 32,767. This is the range has been given by C programming language. But as part of Apex programming has given the more limitation to you here, more limit. -2 to the power of 31 to plus 2 to the power of 31 minus 1. This is a range. Now, let me do the part. Each integer data type variable can store the value between the range -2 to the power of 31 to plus 2 to the power of 31 minus 1. This is the range. Next. So now here in this case, now you can raise a question, sir, how much memory will be occupying by each and every integer? Each integer variable will occupy 4 bytes. Okay, each integer variable will occupy 4 bytes. Each integer variable will occupy 4 bytes of each integer variable will occupy 4 bytes of. So now, in this case, now tell me what are the various data types which will be supporting this integer data type. What are the various field types are available in Salesforce which supports this integer data type? Now, can you give me some examples of those field types in Salesforce which purely support this integer data type? Can you give me some field types
Phone number.
Annual revenue.
which allows us to store purely the numerical values?
Annual revenue.
Annual revenue means what? What is the data type of that annual revenue? Annual revenue means money. Money means with the data type currency, right? Next. Number, okay, right. One more.
Percent.
One more. Percent, right, correct. So now here in this case, each currency field, comma, number field, comma, percent field will reference the integer data type. Each currency field, number field, and percent field will reference the integer data type. These are the various field types are available inside your Salesforce, which will reference this integer data type internally. Okay. Next. So we are using this integer data in order to store some values.
Sir, your voice
So
is kind
minus
of
2 to the
breaking,
power of
sir.
31 means what? What is the value? Let me explain. So now, so each integer data type will be occupying that, storing the value between minus 2 to the power of 31 to plus 2 to the power of 31 minus 1. The range has been given by Salesforce. Now, so minus 2 to the power of 31 means what? Now let me show. Like as 2 to the power of 31. 2 to the power of 31 in the sense this is a value. Okay, this is the value. Now, so it is indicating that the value 2,147 crores. Sorry. So 14 crores, 74 lakhs, 83,648. This is the value. Okay, this is the highest value we can able to store in this integer data type. But sometimes my business is very large enterprise. We have so many divisions. We have so many branches. We have so many portfolios. We are generating huge revenue. We are generating the revenue in terms of thousands of crores, lakhs of crores. Then how can we store that much of large number? Then how to store that much of large number over there? In this case, if we want to store that much of large number, we are going to be using a data type called as long data type. So what is this long data type? Long data type is also like as integer, but it will be giving that more range. It will be giving some more range to store some larger values. In order to store some larger values inside this variable, we are going to be using this long data type. Long data type is also allows us to store the numerical values without any decimal points. This is also like as your integer data type only, but this long data type will be storing the numerical values without any decimal points with larger range. With more range, it will be giving that. Okay, it will be giving some more range over there. That facility is available as part of this long data type. Now, it allows us to store the numerical values without any decimal points, larger range, with large range of values, Now, in this case, so what is the range over here? So now each long data type variable will store the value between the range minus 2 to the power of 63 to plus 2 to the power of 63 minus 1. Okay, minus 2 to the power of 63 to plus 2 to the power of 63 minus 1. This is the range which has been given by Salesforce. Now, minus 2 to the power of 63 means what? What is that number? Let's see. Okay, 2 to the power of 63. So 2 to the power of 63. Let's see that value here. Now, so 2 to the power of 63. Let's see this much of largest number. Okay, this much of large number we can able to store. So in this case, whenever if your business is very high, if it is a large enterprise which is having so many divisions, so many departments, so many branches, at that time if you are generating some more range of revenue, if you are going to be, if you are passing, if you want to store the larger numerical values, then we can go with the data type called as long data type. Okay, so this long data type will allows us to store the largest integer values. Now, in this case, each long data type will allows us to occupy 8 bytes of memory. Each long data type variable will occupy 8 bytes of memory. Each long data type variable will occupy 8 bytes of. So this is the range of this long data type. Integer, long, both are similar, but long data type will be occupying more range. Okay, it will be giving that more range to store the highest values, larger number values. It will occupy more. Next, decimal. Decimal data type. Sometimes, whenever I'm storing some values, I would like to store some value of a particular product. I want to store the weight of a product. Weight of a product. Like it will be having some 12 kg 450 grams. Okay, 12 kgs 450 grams. Sometimes we are going to be having some service tax. Service tax. That will be 200 rupees 50 paisa. Okay, 200 rupees 50 paisa. Sometimes I'm doing the calculation of 10 by 3, which is having some 3.33 like that. We can able to store some decimal point values also. Sometimes what, not only storing purely the numerical values, not only storing the integer values, we need to store some decimal values also. Along with the integer part, I want to store the decimal part also. I want to store the decimal values also over here. So at that time, we are using the help of a data type called as decimal data type. So decimal data type will allows us to store the numerical values along with the decimal points. It allows us to store the numerical values along with the decimal points. Okay, it allows us to store the numerical values along with the decimal points also. So for example, we are storing these values. Okay, in this case, not fun. So whenever I'm going to be using this decimal data type, each and every currency field, okay, each and every currency field will reference the decimal data type by default. Why? Because if you go to the currency data type will be storing the numerical values, nothing but currency value along with some rupees and then paisa also. So now paisa will be up to .99, okay, up to 99 paisa. So that it will be having the integer part as well as the decimal part also. Now, in this case, each currency field will reference the decimal data type. Right? Each currency field will reference the decimal data type. Why? Why? Because whenever I'm going to be creating the currency field will be indicating two decimal points. After the decimal point, it will be giving two decimal digits. When coming to the currency also, it will be having the rupees value, along with it will be having two digits after the decimal point by default. Now, sometimes if you want to store more decimal digits, sometimes if you want to store more decimal digits, I want the 10 by 3 exact value I want, like a 3.33333333 like this. Because when you go to the pharmaceutical organizations, they need exact calculation. As part of pharmaceutical organizations, they need some exact calculations. No, they need some exact calculations. Like as whenever they are using this 10 by 3, they want exact calculation 3.333333 like this. Sometimes I want to store the pi value. Okay, pi value. That value will be 3.1416 like that. We need to store some exact values here, which will be having some more digits after the decimal point. Which will be having some more number of digits after the decimal point. In this case, we are using the help of a data type called as double data type. So double data type is used to store the numerical values along with the decimal points also with the more number of digits after the decimal point. After the decimal point, we can store more number of digits also with the help of this double data type. That this flexibility is available. In this case, now let me give that note point. Double data type allows us to store the numerical values along with more number of decimal digits. More number of decimals. Like for example, we can able to store these values. Okay. We are able to store this more number of decimal digits after this particular decimal point. So in this case, we are going to be using this data type, okay, double. So like for example, so now next one, let's see the next data type. We are done with this integer, we are done with this long, double, decimal, boolean, ID, and the string. Now let's see the date data type, time, and the date time data type. Now let's
Yeah, yeah. One question here. Like, how much data? I mean, like, will this variable occupies? Like decimal data type and decimal double, I mean, double data type.
decimal will occupying that 8 bytes of memory, double also will occupy the 8 bytes of memory. Both are occupying 8 bytes.
Okay. Does it have any range?
Both are
Like,
decimal data type. Sorry? No, there is no
does it have?
specific range. There is no specific range. It will be occupied.
Okay.
There is no
Thanks.
specific range. Okay, there is no specific range. Now, the next one is date data type. So what is this date data type? In some cases, I want to store some date values like birth date and the joining date, relieving date, and then I would like to store some positions open date, positions milestone date, record creation date, record deletion date, like that. In some cases, I want to store the date values. Whenever if you want to store the date values inside the variable, then we are going to be using the data type called as date data type. Date data type allows us to store the date values, which will be in the form of DD, YY format. In order to store the date values inside that variable, we are going to be using date data type. This data type is used to store the date values inside the variable. Inside the variable, we can store the date value. Now, date value should be in the form of DD, YY format. Date value should be in the form of DD, YY format. Now, so to store the date values, we are using date data type. Sometimes I would like to store the time value. Like for example, I'm scheduling for a meeting, a client call. When today when evening at 6:30, or morning at 10 o'clock, night at 8:30, morning at 11 o'clock. When you are scheduling this meeting here, we can specify the time. For example, I'm having a travel plan today. I'm having a train ticket. When today? What is the time? The train timing? Evening at 6 o'clock or night at 10 o'clock. Like that. We need to store some time values. Whenever if you want to store some time values, we are going to be using time data type. So time data type is used to store the time values inside this variable, okay, which can be stored in the form of both 12 hours format and 24 hours format, both. You can store the time value in both the 12 hours format and 24 hours format. Both are available over here. Now, this data type is used to store the time value in both the 12 hours and 24 hours format. Now, so in this case here we can able to store this value like this. Okay, I would like to specify, okay, 11 p.m. That means what it is, 12 hours format. If it is a 12 hours format, it will be having AM, PM both. It will be having AM and the PM. So when you go to the railway reservations, or whenever you are using some flight reservations, at that time, those people are purely following 24 hours format. Like they're indicating that. So now 18:30. 18:30 means what? That is evening 6:30 p.m. 6:30. Like that, we can able to store the time value, either 12 hours or 24 hours format. Whenever you are storing this time value, we can able to store the time over here in terms of, okay, hours, minutes. We can able to store the time in terms of hours and minutes. And we can store the time in terms of hours, minutes, and seconds. We can store the time in terms of hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds also. So now tell me, for 1 second, how many milliseconds are available? 1 second is equals to how many milliseconds?
1,000.
1000 milliseconds, right? So now 1 second is equals to 1000 milliseconds. So that upon storing this particular time, we can store that hours, minutes directly. Sometimes I want to store hours, minutes, and the seconds. In some cases, I want to store hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds also. So depends upon your requirement, we can store the time value either in 12 hours format or 24 hours format also. Okay, in all these formats, hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds, all these things we can able to specify. The possibility is available. Now, the next one, date time data type. So now, as of now, we have stored date values separately, time values separately. But in some cases, I want to store both the date and time stamp value. Like for example, when you go to the record, we are having created date. Then we'll be having date value, time value. Like for example, let me log in into my Salesforce instance. Now, when I open this account record, any of this record, whatever we have inside my objective. When you go to these fields of this particular record, we are having a field called as created date and then last modified date. So in this case, what we have in these places, we are having the date and timestamp value both. It is having this date and timestamp value. It is having date and timestamp value also. Okay, it will be having this both, not only the date, not only the time. It is having both the date and time value is also available. Now, suppose for example, if you are deleting any of this record, when you go to the recycle bin also, when you go to that recycle bin also, okay, somebody has deleted my record here. It is indicating the deletion time also here. It is indicating the deletion time. There also it is indicating both the date and time. So this is the person who has deleted this particular record, which is from this particular object, and so and so date and so time has deleted the record. So we can able to track this whole information. So in this case, whenever if you want to track all this information, if you want to track all this information, then we are going to be using date and time stamp value inside this. Now, to store this kind of date and time stamp value inside a variable, we have to use a data type called as date time data type. Now, so now date time data type will allow us to store both the date and time stamp value inside the variable. This data type is used to store both the date and timestamp value inside the variable. In order to store both the date and timestamp value inside the variable, we are going to be using this date type data type. Now, the next one, blob data type. Blob means what? Binary large objects. Large objects. Now, binary large objects. Blob data type. So what is this blob data type? Basically, blob data type is used to store the binary content of an image or picture or document or a file or a audio file or a video file, text document, PDF document, anything. Now, whenever we are uploading any images, okay, whenever you are uploading any images, all those images will be storing inside the database. How? In the form of binary format. Whenever you are uploading any images, which we can able to use inside your application creation or inside your email templates also upon creating the letterheads. So whatever the images that I'm uploading, those images will be storing in the form of binary content. Whatever the images you are uploading, that image information will be converting into the binary format. That binary format of data will be storing inside that field. So this is the internal concept of the database here. So at that time, whenever you are storing those kind of binary content, it will be using the data type called as blob data type. Like for example, where we are uploading that binary content, generally we are going to be uploading the binary content in the form of document object. Every document object will reference this binary data, blob data type. And then we are adding some attachments also. Whenever you are adding that attachment also will be storing in the form of binary format. Like for example, assume that I'm going to get a card. I'm opening an accounting card here. So for this accounting card, we can add some attachments also. When you come down, we are having an option called as notes and attachments. We can add an attachment also. Click on attach file. So I'm going to selecting the file over here. I'm selecting one text document or PDF file, whatever, anything you want here. I'm selecting this PDF file. When I click on this attach file, the PDF file will be getting attached over here along with this particular record. Then how this PDF file information will be getting resides, this PDF file information will be getting resides, okay, in the form of a binary format. It will be storing in the form of binary format over here. It is storing this information in the form of binary format. Now, once you click on done, so now one attachment has been added over here. So this is the PDF file which you have attached over here. So this file will be storing in the form of a binary format. That means blob data type internally produced. This is what one of the attachment. This is the type called as attachment type. So each and every file, each and every attachment, each and every static resource, each and every document object is referencing the blob data type by default. Okay. So now this data type is used to store the binary content. Okay, store the binary content of an image or a picture or a file or a document or an attachment, etc. Now, so in this case, each document object, and then static resource, from attachment will reference the blob data type by default. Blob data type, the blob data type by default. So these are the various data types here. As of now, we have discussed so many data types which are of type primitive, like integer, log, decimal, double, boolean, and the string, ID, date, time, date time. All these are data types we have discussed along with the blob also. So now we have the last data type that is called as object. What is this object data type basically, and what is the use of this object data type? Now let's see practically in this case here. Basically, object data type is used to store a value of any type. As of now, you know integer data type, it will store only integer value. Double data type will store only double value. String data type will store only string values. Date data type will store only date values. But sometimes I will be getting some value from your database or from your web service call. Which value I will be receiving, I don't know. The web service may be returning either integer value or string value, date value, ID value. I don't know which value it will return. So in this case, how can we store? At that time, we are using a data type called as object. So object is a generic data type which has been given by Salesforce, which can store any type of value. It is a generic data type. Generic data type which can store any type of value. Inside it. We can store integer also, decimal also, double also, byte, boolean also, and then we can store ID also, date also, any type of value we can store inside this. So in this case, object is a base class for the entire Apex programming. Object is the base class for Apex programming language. Object is a base class. Base class means what? This is the first class which they have implemented upon implementing the suffix program. Upon developing the suffix programming language, the first class which they have implemented is object. So object is the base class for the entire Apex programming language. So these are the various primitive data types are available as part of your Apex programming language. Okay. So now by using these data types, how can we define the variables? Okay, how can we define the variables with the help of these data types? We'll see practically. Now let's see the concept of variable declaration. We'll see the concept of variable declaration. So now tell me, what do you mean by a variable basically? What exactly a variable is? What it contains? What exactly a variable?
It's a container which stores data. It is used to
Okay,
store the
it is a container which can store some value inside this, right? Is it a temporary storage or permanent storage? It's a temporary storage.
temporary.
Till what time? Till your application is getting executing, till the time the value will be getting inside. Once the application has been closed, once the transaction is over, automatically the value will be getting lost from the variable because Salesforce will release that memory. Now, let me explain what exactly the variable. For example, assume that I have some space. I'm having my hard disk. So this is my hard disk that I have. This is my hard disk. This hard disk is having the capacity of 500 GB of content. There is a 500 GB of storage space is available inside my hard disk. Now in this entire 500 GB of hard disk, we can store reuse information. Some files also, documents also, songs also, movies also, everything we can store. Suppose, for example, I have stored a value. Okay, I have stored a value with the name some Ramesh. I have stored a value with the name some Ramesh. So Ramesh Kumar is a value which I have stored inside this entire 500 GB of content. So this is the space. This is the value which I have stored. So now to store this value, it will be occupying some memory, right? Yes. So it will be having some starting memory address, right? In order to store this value, it is starting from a specific memory address. It will be having some memory address is available, right? Yes. How can we recognize the memory addresses? Memory addresses will be recognized in the form of hexadecimal values. As part of operating system, in the assembly language programming, memory addresses will be referencing in the form of hexadecimal format. That will be starting from always with a 0x. Assume that this memory address value is 0x11 x10. Assume that this is the memory address, starting memory address of the value Ramesh Kumar. In order to store this value, it will be having some starting memory address. Like for example, come to a general scenario. So assume that today I have an interview. Assume that today I have an interview. So in which company? In some TCS. So now where exactly the TCS? There is a location, right? There is an address, right? Okay, there is an address, right? TCS company is having some address. So we need to store that address. Based on that address, we can go to that location. We can attend the interviews. Like the similar way, whenever if you want to collect this value, Ramesh Kumar, we need some address. Where exactly it is available? What is that address? So now this is the address over here because this starting address will be indicated by using this hexadecimal format, which will be always formed with the help of 0x1. These are the three characters they will use internally. Now, in this case, suppose for example, in future, if you want to get this value Ramesh Kumar, then we have to remember this particular address. Based on this address only, we can able to locate this location and we can able to pick up this value Ramesh Kumar. Okay, so in this case, whenever if you want to get this value Ramesh Kumar, then we have to use this memory address, starting memory address, that is 0x11x10. This is the memory address. So without this memory address, we can't locate this location and we can't able to get that value. We need to set from beginning to ending where exactly this value is available. That will be very difficult for me to set that entire 500 GB of content. So in this case here, now tell me, are you able to remember this memory address? No, we can't remember. Why? Because is in our human brain, we are having a very small chip in our mind. We can't store much information. Sometimes we are unable to recognize, we are unable to recollect our bank account PIN number, which is a 4-digit PIN number we can't remember. Then how can we remember this much of complex number? No, sometimes you can raise the question, sir, I would like to buy hard this number and I would like to recognize over here. Then fine. Okay, now we can able to buy hard this one and we can able to recognize this value also. We can able to recollect this value also in some cases over here. But in some cases here, suppose for example, if it is not only having one value, I would like to store some multiple values also over here. Not only one value, I would like to store some multiple values also. Like for example, I'm storing that some more values over here. Like as I would like to indicate the designation of this Ramesh Kumar, like as some sales manager. So now it will be having some different location. It has been stored somewhere over here inside my 500 GB of memory space. So now this is also having some separate memory address, right? Yes. Assume that this memory address is like as for example, it is having some 0x, okay, 1100x1. This is the memory address. Now, for example, here I'm having his address, like a city, like as some Bangalore. This value also has been stored somewhere. Now, this value also will be having some starting memory address, right? Yes, the values are storing in different locations over here. This is also having some starting memory address. So in this case here, we will be having the memory address 0x, okay, 1100x. This is the memory address. I'm storing the balance amount of this particular customer also over here. Balance amount is 2,45,000. This is the value here. Now this value will be storing somewhere inside my memory location. This is also having some starting memory address, right? Yes. So it will be having the starting memory address like some 0x, okay, 1100XX. These are the values are available. Now tell me, are you able to recognize all these memory addresses? No. If it is one, I can recognize. Okay, if it is one memory address, I can recognize by adding that one or by making a note on a particular paper. But in some cases, multiple values are there. Ramesh Kumar, to get this one, this is the memory address. To get that, his designation, this memory address. To get his city name, this memory address. To get his balance value, this memory address. That means what multiple memory addresses are there, so which are very complex to remember, which is complex to remember and recollect. It's very difficult to recollect okay, memory addresses values. So in this case, what we can do to avoid this kind of difficulties, to avoid this kind of problems, for this particular memory addresses, we can give some easy to remember names. We are giving some alias names. We are giving some easy to remember names over here. So whatever the memory addresses are available, for these memory addresses, I would like to give a reference name. Like for example, so for this one, I'm giving the reference name like as some customer name. I'm giving this reference name like as customer. For this one, I'm giving the reference name as designation. Designation. I'm giving the reference name as designation. And then here I'm going to be indicating like as location. Location. I'm giving this reference name as location. And here I'm giving this name as balance amount. Balance amount. So now these are the various reference names that have given for this memory addresses. Now tell me, so now remembering this particular memory addresses are easy or remembering these names are easy? These names are very easy to remember. Okay, these names are very easy to remember. We can't remember this starting memory addresses. This will be very difficult to remember because these are hexadecimal values. We can't remember all these things. So now here in this case, to avoid this kind of problems, okay, to avoid this kind of problems, so instead of remembering each and every memory address separately, we can able to give the easy to remember name. We are giving some reference names for each and every variable. For each and every memory address, I'm giving a reference name. These reference names are called as, okay, variables. Okay, these reference names are called as variables. So what do you mean by a variable? Variable is nothing but a name which can be allocated to a memory address in order to locate a value. Like for example, simple general concept. Assume that today I got a call from one of my childhood friend. So it's a new number here. I don't have his contact number as of now. Today I have received that call from this person first time. I had that conversation with that friend and then he asked me, so please save this number for the future contacts. Now tell me, will you able to remember his contact number in future? No. Then how can we remember? Because in future I want to make a call to the person also. He's one of my childhood friend. Okay, previously we have a different contact number. Now he has changed his mobile number. Then how can we contact that person in future? In this case, what we can do, we can save that number. How? By giving a name, like as Ramesh Kumar, some new. This is the new number. Okay, that means what we are saving that contact number by giving a name. So in future, if you want to use that mobile number, then we can type, we can search the number based on this name only. Here. We are not using that mobile number because we don't know that remember. We don't know that mobile number. We can't remember that mobile number. We are saving that number by using a name. Like the similar way here also, whenever I'm storing some values inside my memory, so each and every value will be occupying some location. That location will be having some starting memory addresses. So instead of remembering these values by using these memory addresses, we can able to assign a easy to remember name for each and every memory address that is called as variable. So what do you mean by variable? Variable is nothing but a name which can be allocated to a memory address, okay, in order to locate a value. So each and every variable will be holding some value. This variable will be having the value Ramesh Kumar. This variable will be holding the value this sales manager. This variable will be having the value Bangalore. This variable will be having the value 2,45,000. Like that here, each and every variable will be having some value inside this one. That value may be either a string value, that value may be either a numerical value. So whatever depends upon the type of the value we would like to store, we have to define this respective variable. We have to define the respective data type of it. Then, how can we define these variables? Now, let me explain practically in this case. Okay. Now, let me explain practically. Now, so let me give the note point over here. What exactly the so variable is nothing but a name to be get allocated. To be get allocated to a memory location. Memory location in order to locate a value. In order to locate a value. In order to locate a value. Variable is nothing but a name to be get allocated, okay, to a memory location in order to locate a value. Then what is the purpose of this variable? By using these variables, we can store some values inside this. These are the values I'm storing. In this variable customer name, I'm storing the value Ramesh Kumar. In this variable designation, I'm storing the value sales manager. In this variable balance amount, I'm storing the value 2,45,000. Like that here, in each and every variable, we can store some value inside this. Okay. So generally, variables are used to store the values temporarily for some time. So variables are used to store the values temporarily for some time. That means here, instead of storing these values in the database, I will need to store some values temporarily for some time. So at that time, we can able to use the help of variables. Now, so how many variables we can define? N number of variables also we can define. So now, as part of the application requirement, we can define n number of variables. N number of variables. N number of variables in an application. So as part of that application requirement, we can define n number of variables inside an application. That possibility is available. Then how can we define these variables? Now let's see practically discuss. What is the syntax? Is a syntax in order to define a variable. Okay. In order to define a variable, what is the syntax we use to follow? Whenever you are defining the variable, we have to give an access specifier. Access specifier. I'm indicating in the square braces. What are the things that are specified in the square braces? Those are optional. Okay, what are the things I'm specifying in the square braces? Those are optional. Those are not mandatory. Those are optional. You may specify the access specifier. You may not specify the access specifier. You may specify or you may not specify that access specifier. Okay, that possibility is available. And then we can specify the data. And then we can specify the variable name. We can specify the variable name and equals to, we can specify the value. We can specify the value. You may supply the value, you may not supply the value also. That possibility is available. Now, so whenever we are defining this variable, we have to specify the access specifier, we have to specify the data type, and then the variable name, and then if you want, we can assign some values also. That possibility is available to be over here.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
You said,
Yes.
the square braces is optional, right?
Yes.
And then you're
Yes,
saying
right.
the value is also optional, but regardless, you haven't used the square braces there.
Now, here I have specified, I forgot to specify this one. You may supply the value, you may not supply the values also. Okay. Assigning the value is optional. How to assign the values, how to define the variables, I will show you practically. Multiple combinations I will show you, which we are using as part of program. Okay, now because access specifier is a separate concept. When moving forward, we'll see access specifier concept separately. Okay, now for example, so whenever we are going to be defining the variable, we have to follow this syntax because these syntactical rules are very, very important. Okay, these syntactical rules are very, very important over here. Now, so now here in this case, now, so now we can specify how can we define these variables right now as part of my Apex programming language. Now let's see practically this case. Now, so we can specify the access specifier. It's an optional. You may specify, you may not specify. But as of now, we don't know what is access specifier, what are the various access specifiers are available. So it's an optional right now, we don't need to specify. And we can specify the data type. You know what is the data type, what are the various data types are available, you know. and then we can specify the variable name, and then optionally we can assign some value. So whenever you are defining the variable name, we have to follow some rules. Okay? Variable name, okay, rules. These are called as the naming conventions. Naming conventions. So what are the various naming conventions we would like to follow? What are the various naming conventions we would like to follow? First, whenever we are going to be defining the variable, please give a proper meaningful name for each and every variable. We have to specify the meaningful name for the variable. For each and every variable, we have to specify a meaningful name. Like for example, customer balance amount, like that. Generally, when you go to some other programming languages, some people are having some habit, like as integer x, integer y, integer z, like that. Forget about this concept. Don't define the variable with the single character. It will be very, okay, it's not a recommended thing in the real-time implementation. Whenever you are writing some code as part of your implementation, as part of your real-time project, mandatorily we have to follow some rules. We have to follow some coding standards. We have to follow some naming conventions. Based on those naming conventions only, we can able to write the code, okay, inside your application. So don't define the variables with a single characters. That will not be recommended as part of your programming language in the real-time implementation. Here we can write that code. Salesforce won't have given any limitation. Salesforce didn't restrict you, but when you go to the real time, we have to follow some specific process. Why? Because is, for example, today I'm defining a variable by using integer some x, comma y, comma z. I can define the variables. I will write the code. I will complete my task. My task is working fine. But today I'm in the company. Suppose tomorrow I will be shifting to some different company. At that time, my position will be replaced with a new resource. A new employee will join my place in my place. Then that person also should be able to understand why I have written the code like this. What is this x variable, y variable, z variable? He should be able to understand, right? Yes. If I'm giving my own names, my own formats, my own shortcut, then how that another person can understand my code in future? That will be a problem. Because we are doing the application development only once, but we have to give lifetime support to the customer. We have to give lifetime support to the customer. Every year we would like to add some new enhancements, some new features into that application. So other people will be working on those requirements. So that here, so it will be causing some issues to understand that existing code, to analyze that existing code. Now, so for that reason, we have to give some proper meaningful names for each and every variable. Don't define the variable with a single character. Next, upon giving this variable name should be a single word. Okay, it should not have any spaces in between that. Like as we can't give like a customer space name. Don't give like that here. This is the common mistake that people will do initially. That's what I'm giving this information. Okay, this is the common mistake that people will do initially while writing that code. Don't give any spaces inside this name. So variable name should be a single word. It should not have any spaces. Variable name should not have any spaces inside this. This is the second principle. Next, third one. It is always recommended to start the variable name with a character. Always start the variable name with a character. Don't start the variable name with some symbols. Don't start the variable names with some numbers, numerical numbers. Always start the variable name with a character. That is a fundamental principle. Next, the fourth one. Upon writing this, defining these variables, can I use any special characters? Yes, not all, only underscore special character will be supported. We can use underscore special character inside the variable. Inside the variable name, we can use the special character that is underscore. Like for example, okay, customer underscore name, balance underscore amount. Like that, we can able to use underscore character over here. We can't use any other characters like as a dot, comma, hash, dollar. These kind of characters will not be supporting by Apex programming. Upon defining this variable, we can use that underscore special character also inside that variable. Okay. Now, so these are the rules which we would like to follow upon defining the variables. Then how can we define the variables? Now let's see practically. For example, now, so we have to specify data type variable. Value we no need to specify. I will show you how to supply the value also separately. Just defining the variables. I want to store some student details. So every student will be having what? Some student ID, student name, and his a class name, his a contact number, and then his email ID. He will be having his fees amount also. Whether the student is active or not, he will be having his address also. These are the details I would like to store. Student ID first. Student ID is what? Numerical. Now tell me, how can we define numerical? Means integer. Integer, we can give that variable name, student ID. This is the variable which I have defined here. Integer, student ID. That means I'm defining a variable with the name student ID, which is of type integer. So this is the meaning of this statement. If I'm writing these two words, integer, nothing but data type, variable name, simple. Access specifier is not mandatory, that I told you. So that I am not specifying an access specifier. Assigning values also optional, that I'm not specifying anything. Simply I have given data type, variable name. That means now this statement is informing to the Apex compiler, dear Apex compiler, please assign some memory for this variable student ID. Okay, because it is of type integer. The user has defined a variable with the name student ID, which is of integer. So integer will occupy how much memory? 4 bytes of memory. So please reserve 4 bytes of memory, and then this 4 bytes of memory, please find to this particular memory address. Okay, whatever the starting memory address is there for this 4 bytes, store this memory address in this variable student ID. This is the meaning of this statement. And in this memory address, what value it will store by default? I haven't assigned any value, so it will be storing the default value as null. It will store the default value null inside this. This is the internal meaning of this statement. If I'm writing this at 2 words, then it will be giving this much of meaning. Like this statement is informing to the Apex compiler that the user has defined a variable with the name student ID, which is of type integer. So please reserve 4 bytes of memory, and then please store the default value as null inside that memory location over here, and then assign that memory location to this particular variable. This is the meaning of this statement. Now, next one. I want to store the student name. Student name is of type what? String. Like as his name may be Ramesh Kumar, Pavan Kumar, Suresh Kumar, whatever, anything. So this is of type string. String, I'm indicating student. Next. I want to store his address. Okay, I want to store his address. Address is also string, right? So I'm defining student address. Student address. So what is the class name? First class, second class, third class, nursery, or what? I want to store that class. String student class. What is the class of the student? Next, which class he is studying right now? No, the student is paying some fees, right? Yes. What is his fees? Now your fees will be what? Money. Money in the sense currency. Currency means decimal. each and every currency field will reference decimal data type. Decimal, so now P amount. Is amount. Next, student will be joining today. So we would like to store the date, right? So now what is this joining date here? Date will be of type what? Date. Date, I'm indicating joining. I want to collect the student data birth also. For that one, that is also date here. Now, the birth date. Whether student is active or not, nothing but currently he is studying in our school or not. I would like to know. So that here I'm indicating he is active. Whether the student is currently studying inside my class or inside my school or not. Or he already completed his education in our school or currently still he is studying in our school. To identify that we are using this is active, which is of type. Like that I'm defining these variables over here. So it depends upon the data, depends upon the requirement, we can define the variable with the respective data types. This is how we are defining these variables here. In this case, what happened? So now whenever I'm defining the variables, in these variables, isn't any values over here? No, we haven't isn't any values. Then what is the value by default Salesforce will store? Null. Salesforce will be storing the default value as null. Now, in this case. If the user didn't assign or did not assign, any value for the variable, then Salesforce will assign the value for the variable as null. Salesforce will be storing the default value as null. If the user did not assign any value by default, then Salesforce will store the default value as null inside this field. No. So now here in this case, now tell me here you can do the result. Okay, here we can write the question. Sir, for example, here you have defined integer variable student ID 5. So now do we have any space to optimize this code? Here I have defined string variable student name, student address, student class. These three are of type student in the string. Now, instead of defining these three variables by using the 3 lines of code, can I combine these 3 lines of code into a single line? Do we have any chance? Do we have any way to optimize this code? Yes, there is a possibility. Here, 2 date variables have depended. Joining date and the birth date. Can I combine these 2 lines of code into a single line? Because this is also of type date, this is also of type date type. Can you combine this into a single one? Yes. So upon defining the variable, we can define multiple variables also in a single line. Because each and every variable are defined in a separate line over here. But here it will be looking like as empty. So can I reduce this number of lines of code? Yes, there is a possibility. Now, while defining the variables, we can define the multiple variables in a single line. As we can define multiple variables in a single line as well. For example, same variables I would like to define like string student name, comma student address, comma student class. So now we can define these 3 variables here. Instead of defining 3 lines, I am going to be using single line over here. One shot. That's it. This is also of type string. This is also of type string. This is also of type string. So that all these 3 I am defining into a single line. And then date, I am indicating joining date and the birth date. We can define. For example, I would like to indicate decimal, P amount, comma due amount. Like that, we can able to specify the information also like that. So multiple variables we can able to define, okay, in one line by using the suffix programming language. That is also possibilities available as part of your Apex programming language. Okay, this is how we are going to be defining the variables as part of your Apex programming language. Then, how to assign the values for these variables, we'll see in the next session. In the next session, we'll see once the variables have been defined, how to assign the values for these variables, how to perform the operations, we'll see one by one. Here, we'll see in the next session. Okay, because basic concepts are very, very important. Okay, you should be very strong in these fundamental concepts. If you are strong in fundamental concepts, further programming will be very easy. That's what I'm going in detail. Each and every small points also I'm explaining with detailed information to you so that you can understand more. Maybe so many people from non-technical background over here in every batch. That's what here I'm giving in detail information of this program.
Excuse me, sir.